Good morning, everyone, and welcome at the EDIRE project meeting open event. Together, we're going to see the PhD highly skilled yet precarious navigating institutional responsibility and the EDI experience. Today, we shine the spotlight on PhD researcher to address the core question: how can we foster doctoral students' autonomy while addressing the structural vulnerabilities? Doctoral candidates represent the future of research, innovation, and university teaching, and the guardians of academic knowledge in the era of artificial intelligence. It is a urgent call to action because their precarious reality demands greater awareness and concrete action. Ensuring their well-being is crucial for strengthening research excellence and safeguarding academic freedom. Our event resonates with the Stand Up for Science movement, defending science and humanities, protecting academic liberty, and reaffirming university. EDI-based societal role by nurturing the next generation of scientists and scholars, or PhD candidates, and addressing their precarious condition. We safeguard the integrity, diversity, and future excellence of scientific inquiry. The Stand Up for Science started with the Trump administration. And to add that our university endorsed the movement. If we fail to support PhDs, we risk losing the very people who uphold research integrity and intellectual rigor. It is our duty to protect them. It is our duty to protect the living forces of research. With the stage set, let's see why this issue matters so deeply for academia, institution, and EDI principles. We need to grasp the broader picture. Well, because future of academia, today's doctoral student will shape tomorrow's research landscape. Current inequalities risk perpetuating flawed systems and practices. It is the last chance to sensitize them before they become leaders. Because institutional responsibility, universities act as powerful gatekeepers that define academic standards and cultivate future scholars. This responsibility extends beyond academic rigor to ensuring adequate support, both academically and socio-emotionally, protecting freedom, protecting EDI from access to doctoral studies to employment. And because EDI integration, EDI initiative should not be treated as mere add-ons. They are central to creating a doctoral experience that is fair, accessible, and nurturing. We must offer a space to discuss the doctoral student-supervisor relationship, acknowledging the personal challenges of self-exposure and vulnerability. Uniform one-size-fits-all, EDI policies often miss the specific struggle of PhD candidates who frequently remain invisible or misunderstood. Barriers to the PhD bridge at every stage, entry, progression, and post-PhD career. Now let's delve into the core findings about why these PhD pathways often remain precarious despite a high level. Despite highly qualified, PhD students frequently encounter systemic issues. Here are some key observations explaining this paradox. Insufficient recognition and consideration. Doctoral candidates remain undervalued. Structural mechanism and responsibility. Universities and private sectors may push research in narrowly specialized fields, such as data science, biotech, marginalizing other disciplines. Temporal constraint, doctoral working time consuming and pressure to finish quickly in clash with pro-innovative scholarship. Lack of awareness, many stakeholders remain unaware of the issue PhD students face every day. Public and private funding tends to favor hyper-specialized domains aligned with technical priorities and societies. And confusion of merit and capacity to endure. Perseverers believe that intellectual excellence inherently it requires enduring hardships and making personal sacrifice. By framing PhD training as an elite pursuit, some argue that suffering is part of the package, leading to physical and psychological distress. Let's break down those unpacking doctoral vulnerability from financial stress to isolation, showing just how demanding the PhD journey can become. Painful experience. The doctoral journey can be extremely demanding and isolating, breeding a sense of solitude or abandonment. Lack of specific training, insufficient technical EDI focus, or personal development instruction can hamper both academic progress and well-being. Financial precarity. Many PhD students cope with unstable or inadequate funding, struggle with family, parenting family, balancing doctoral work with family life thought. Some find it nearly impossible. Culture of pressure, the push of hyperproductivity trivialize suffering and mental health issue. 40% believe it's normal to experience severe mental distress during a PhD. The evaluation of the PhD, social of institutional norms may imply that a doctoral candidate's worth is tied to how much they suffer. Statements like, if you're not anxious or feeling like an imposter, something is wrong, are often heard. And the last, opaque administrative system, complex, unclear bureaucracy, leaves many PhD uncertain about their rights, deadline, or support service. Among these vulnerabilities, women in doctoral programs often face even greater challenges. Let's look at why. For female PhD students, biases, harassment, risk, and family barriers often add extra layers of difficulties. As you can see on the chart, in 10 years, nothing really changed. You have exactly the same percentage in science, 30% in 2010, 31 in 2020. Not taken seriously, women may face biased judgment and challenges in being recognized for their competencies. Intensified feelings of illegitimacy, sometimes worsened by imposed quotas or tokenism, fueling further doubts about belonging. Inappropriate behavior and assault, incident of harassment, or even sexual violence remain underreported, and many supervisors have little EDI or VSS training unless they personally pursue it. Balancing care and family, for some women, motherhood becomes a stock, either a choice. Either you stay home or you do science. In one study among 176 PhD students in psychology and educational faculty in Geneva, no woman with a child under 5 had obtained her doctorate. Now let's see how this issue, mental health on road drops with EDI, translate into alarming consequences for academia. And they are alarming consequences. Here is the bigger picture, the tangible fallout from the precarious conditions we've discussed. Mental health, risk. 40% of doctoral students meet the criteria for moderate to severe anxiety or depression. 33 to 35% show risk of suicidal ideation. drop in new enrollment. In France, in 80%, an 18%, sorry, decline from 2011-2020, minus 10 in mathematics, minus 15 in chemistry, minus 35 in social science and humanities. This signals a risk of European research falling behind at a time where research is so crucial. Low doctoral proportion in the workforce. Only 1% of those aged 25-34 in France hold a doctoral degree below the OECD average. 1.3. Italy is 0.6. Ireland 1.7. Spain 0.8. Over 10 years, PhD rose on the same time. On 10 years, PhD rose by 43% in China, 20 in India, 7 in the US, but fell by 17 in France. Misplaced elite labor. The elite statue fails to translate into real-world career opportunities for many PhDs. Only 30% of the 13,000 doctoral students surveyed in 2023 say they had access to accurate information on career pathways. Doctoral graduates account for merely 11% of researchers in private enterprise. With EDI integration, EDI initiatives often remain peripheral, seen as a beneficial for public image, but not embraced as a structural level. Reduced pedagogical supervision. A 17% drop in supervisory capacity means less guidance, more isolation, and higher dropout risk. That was the introduction to next interventions and next speakers. Who am I gonna introduce now? I hope we're not late. That's good. Zaya, you wanna say a word for EDIRE?
Yeah, thank you, Sophia, for this introduction. Yeah. No, I think it's okay because I can turn on.
Yeah.
Okay, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks very much. So thanks, Sophia, for this introduction. I just want, hello everybody, and welcome to this seminar. I just want to add a few information about the context. This seminar is part of the European project EDIRE for EDA, and so the project deals with equality, diversity, and inclusion, and it is coordinated by SST for Sarajevo School of Science and Technology, and there are 4 partners. UNICH for the University of Geneva, the University Computational of Madrid, and Technological University of Dublin. And we have been working on this project since almost something like 18 months, and the project will finish by the end of this year. And we have been working and studying several problems and working also on elaborating strategies to improve things at the university in the DI domain for students, but also for staffs and professors. So thanks, Sophia, for the organization of this event. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Zaya. As you can see, we're going to be together till 1 p.m. We're going to have a break at 10:35 to 10:15. And now let me introduce the first intervention with Virginie Liot and Vanessa Simeon. Thank you for being here with us. Oh, this is yours, Virginie. Vanessa?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, everybody. Can you help me share my
Sure.
presentation?
Sure. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing mine.
Yes. Okay, so do that maybe. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, perfect.
I just need to go back at the beginning. That's it. So Virginie Liot will start, and I will come back later during the presentation.
Hello everyone. We are delighted to present our topic today, welcoming disabled students, how and when benefits for universities. Tu passes à la slide suivante, s'il te plaît.
Yes.
So my name is Virginie Liot. I'm a PhD candidate and I work in education sciences. Vanessa Simeon is also a PhD candidate, but in sports sociology. Si tu peux avancer. So let me introduce our topic. In France, in 2019, students with disabilities represented only 1.69% of the students' population. Moreover, access to master's level is more difficult for them, while there is an overrepresentation in bachelor's degrees and an underrepresentation in master's degrees. Finally, only 0.8% of people with disabilities go to doctoral studies. However, disability doesn't mean incapacity. After returning to the concept of disability, we will present to the sociological study we have carried out on disabled doctoral students, which will enable us to reflect on the reception of disabled students and the difficulties they may encounter. Finally, we will present the advantages of welcoming students with disabilities to universities and the opportunities that it represents. First of all, let's look at the misconceptions about disability. As you can read, in fact, 80% of disabilities are invisible, and only 8% of disabled people use wheelchairs. There are different types of disability, which can be both visible and invisible. According to a study by the Malakoff-Mederick Handicap Foundation, invisible disabilities account for more than 80% of all disabilities, especially disabling illness, psychological disabilities, and cognitive disabilities. However, a study carried out in 2016 by the same foundation showed that only 7% of respondents were aware that 80% of disabled people have an invisible disability. The majority of respondents believe that this percentage is minor. This underestimation of the reality of invisible disability is an obstacle to properly understanding and supporting disability situations in the workplace. The consequences of the type of disabilities have different effects on students. For example, the temporality of the effects on the disability on the students will not be the same. Although chronic illness encompass a wide range of symptoms and health conditions that share an important characteristic, an unpredictable waxing and waning course of illness with recurring relapses and hospitalizations, unlike more traditional and better understood disabilities that can be addressed by specific solutions such as wheelchair access, hearing aids, or readers, chronic illness require ongoing flexible accommodations. European universities are legally obliged to guarantee the inclusion of students with disabilities thanks to a robust legislative framework combining European directives, fundamental rights, international conventions, and national laws. This means that university must provide reasonable accommodation for students with disabilities, ensure physical and digital accessibility to infrastructure, and teaching materials, train staff to support students with disabilities. However, the effective application of these measures depends on financial resources and national policies, which sometimes leads to disparities from one country or university to another.
So I need. I'm sorry, I can't access my notes with the share of the video. I need to find a way to do that. Virginie, maybe can you try to
yes.
share the...
Je
Je vais essayer de partager le...
ouais, je sais pas où c'est moi pour partager.
En bas, tu as une flèche.
Ouais.
Partager. We're sorry about that.
Tu veux que je continue sinon?
Non, je vais pas. Ok.
Non, Vanessa, tu me l'envoies et je le partage.
Si tu peux, ouais, s'il te plaît, ouais.
Envoie-le.
Bah, c'est celui que tu as déjà. Enfin, je te reprends, c'est pas grave, ça ira plus vite. Hein. So if you can start at slide 6, please. Just before that one. Just before that one. Yes, this one. Thank you very much. Yes. So sorry about that. So the methodology and presentation of the 5 words doctoral co-development groups and disability situation. Our qualitative methodology is based on participants' observations during the sessions, supplemented by the collection of documents, presentation, training reports, and questionnaires handed out by the coaches at the start of the training. In total, the training consisted of 4 two-hour sessions held between the 16th January and the 2nd of April 2024. We were able to observe a group of 7 female PhD students aged between 23 and 60 who took part in the training. The co-development group CODEV proposal was open to PhD students with disabilities as a cross-disciplinary doctoral training course offered for the first time in 2024 by the COMU, which is a community of university in Lyon, including research fields like education, psychology, information, communication. It was run by two professional coaches with experience of working with people with disabilities. The approach was formulated as followed by them. Thesis writing is a demanding process, all the more so when you have a disability, whether sensory, motor, physiological, or cognitive. In this co-development group, the richness comes from the diversity of experiences. Here, trust, responsibility, a sense of community, and openness will enable you to support each other, to share, and to inspire each other along the way. The aim was not to form a homogeneous group, but to make the most of the complementary nature of each person's situation. Initially planned as face-to-face sessions, distance learning sessions were finally set up at the request of one doctoral student. To prepare for the training, each PhD student was sent an email to anonymously identify the disability-related issues they encountered during their doctoral study and that they wishes to address during the training. The first session enabled the two coaches to present the highly codified procedure for a CODEV. So you can change the slide. Thank you. More specifically, what is the profile of the PhD student with disability that we followed? As we noted earlier, this profile were non-homogeneous. There were 7 women and only 1 man. The age were between 23 and 60 years old. They were from multiple research fields: sports sociology, education, geomatics and public health, supply chains, political science, and also there were a lot of financial diversity. Some had a PhD contract for students with disabilities, some had corporate financing, others self-financing, some had a PhD contract, not for disabled people, and some had a contract with the university to be a contractual teacher. And there were a lot of issues raised by this disabled doctoral student and some proposed solutions. We will show some of them. We choose 4 of them to address to you today. So the first one was reorganizing the work schedule. The problem for the PhD student was that they found it hard to accept their disability that can only improve in the medium to long term. They needed feedbacks and advices on how to accept their new disability, as well as ideas on how to make the necessary or possible adjustment they needed to better organize their work schedule. The second issue that was shared with us, the PhD student was particularly tired in the afternoons, and this causes them stress. They particularly wonder how to manage the thesis defense if it was proposed in the afternoon. They point out that they have tried to talk to their thesis supervisor, but have received little to no attention to their issues.
The third, time and workstation adjustments. The problem the doctoral students was encountering difficulties with their job, in particular in obtaining recognition of the needs and accommodations related to her disability. At the time, there was no occupational physician available to see her, so no accommodation was possible. By dint of perseverance, she managed to put in place the necessary adjustments with the nurse, albeit with considerable delay. In the end, she didn't agree to proposed arrangements which didn't meet her needs. A locked room where she could leave her things and rest if she needed to, because she was offered a room with a passageway where she couldn't leave her things or rest. And first, the program's doctoral student would like to know how to improve his scientific presentations, which have been made using presentation sheets in Braille. And there is also the question of self-confidence and acceptability, sorry.
You can change the slide, please. So, as we have seen from the difficulties encountered by doctoral students, it is important to distinguish between equality and equity. Increasing chances of success requires a combination of equality and equity. Equality is required through the right to non-discrimination, while equity calls for inequalities to be corrected by providing specific support for certain pupils in other words, by taking positive action. To be more precise, equity strategies are different from equality strategies. To differentiate these two types of strategies, we use the following statement. Equity is a means, equality is an end. In other words, it is not a question of offering exactly the same treatment to each individual, but rather of adapting strategies according to specific needs in order to achieve equality. Strategies aimed at inclusion go beyond equity or integration strategies. Inclusion focuses on eliminating obstacles by transforming environments rather than equipping individuals to overcome them. Inclusion is a collective responsibility, whereas integration places the responsibility on individuals. Working for inclusion means agreeing for modifying the learning, research, or working environment so that each person can express their full potential. You can change the slide, please. And go to the next one too. And the next one.
I can.
Yeah,
One important thing is that accessibility allows us to tap into everyone's potential. You can change, please. So disability doesn't mean inability. For example, Annie Jam Cannon was an astronomer. She lost her hearing in childhood, but classified over 350,000 stars and helped development the stellar classification system still in use today. Another example, Gerard Vermeij is a paleontologist. Blind since the age of 3, he became a world expert in marine biology and paleontology, studying shells through touch. The other one, please. John Forbes Nash Jr. His work in mathematics revolutionized game theory and modern economics. He was mentally handicapped, suffering from paranoid schizophrenia. Farida Bedwe is a renowned Ghanaian engineer. She overcame cerebral palsy to become an expert on microfinance technology. She developed a banking system to help unbanked populations in Africa and is an advocate for the rights of people with disabilities. And so many others in a wide variety of fields of study.
we can check. So the inclusion of students with disability is not just a legal or ethical obligation, it is a powerful economic driver for European universities. No, you can say. European universities have access to several sources of funding to improve accessibility, inclusion, and mobility for students with disabilities. These funds make it possible to adapt campuses, improve teaching resources, and support the participation of students with disabilities in international exchanges. These are various measures co-financed by the European Union. You can change the slide. Yes. First, we can mention the European Social Fund Plus, ESF Plus, whose objective is to support access to education and training for vulnerable groups, including students with disabilities. The Commission welcomes the political agreement reached between the European Parliament and EU member states in the Council of the Commission's proposal for a regulation on the European Social Fund Plus. The ESF Plus wants to be a key financial instrument to implement the European Pillar of Social Rights, to support jobs and create a fair and socially inclusive society. For example, the University of Barcelona used ESF Plus funding to establish a mentorship program for students with disabilities, providing tailored academic and social support. Can go to the next slide. Also, there is the European Regional Development Fund, ERDF. The ERDF is designed to strengthen economic, social, and territorial cohesion in the European Union. It aims to do this by correcting imbalance between regions, enabling investment in a smarter, greener, more connected, and more social Europe that is closer to its citizens. The ERDF finance programs work in shared responsibilities between the European Commission and national and regional authorities of member states. The member states' administration choose which projects to finance and takes responsibility for the day-to-day management. One of the priorities of the fund for the 2021 to 2027 period is to enable investment to make Europe and its region more social by supporting employment, education, skills, social inclusion, and equal access to healthcare, as well as by enhancing the role of culture and sustainable tourism. For example, the University of Hamburg in Germany used ERDF fund to make libraries and laboratories fully accessible for wheelchairs users and visibility impaired students with braille books, screen readers, and adapt study rooms.
You can change, please. Thank you. Erasmus Plus aims to support international mobility for students with disabilities, with additional grants to cover disability-related expenses during student exchanges, personal assistance, transport, specialized equipment, and also supporting universities in adapting their Erasmus Plus programs to students with disabilities. Universities have several financial advantages when using the Erasmus Plus program for students with disabilities. Erasmus Plus provides specific grants for students with disabilities in addition to standard mobility scholarships. This can cover costs such as support services, adapted equipment, or specific accommodation. By securing Erasmus Plus funding, universities can reduce their own expenses related to supporting students with disabilities and reallocate their resources to other projects. Universities that facilitate mobility for students with disabilities can attract more students, potentially increasing enrollment and overall funding. Erasmus Plus also funds initiatives aimed of improving accessibility and inclusion in higher education. By actively participating, universities can receive financial support to enhance their infrastructure and services. Some universities may benefit from incentives or better rankings in academic and institutional evaluations by demonstrating their commitments to inclusion and diversity. In summary, Erasmus Plus helps universities financially support the mobility of students with disabilities, while reducing their own budgetary burden and improving their overall appeal. You can change, please. Final example, Horizon Europe is the European Union's framework program for research and innovation. For example, the University of Vienna in Austria developed virtual reality tools funding by Horizon Europe to help students with learning disabilities grasp complex mathematical and scientific concepts. You can change, please. By facilitating access to students with disabilities, universities gain funding, increase their attractiveness, actively contribute to technological and pedagogical innovations that benefit society as a whole. You can change, please. Thank you for your attention and for listening, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Virginie. Thank you, Vanessa. It was really brilliant and very interesting. And thank you for increasing our awareness about people with disabilities. Now, if you have any question, yes, Zaya.
Yeah. Thank you, Vanessa and Virginie, for this short talk and very interesting topic. My question is about the rate of students with disabilities. Do you have the rate of candidates? I mean, do you think that this number is lower than the candidate number or higher? I don't know. And do you know if the selection process, I mean, Parcoursup, which is the French selection software, consider the disabilities of students?
So I can try to answer. I have no idea about Parcoursup, if they take into account the disability or not. For what I can talk about is the project to finance the PhD when you have a disability. So and we don't have any. It's pretty obscure. It means like we don't have a lot of information about how people are granted the financial support or not. So we know there is like 10 people reading our proposal of thesis, but we don't know how to choose between all the proposals. And so yes, it's not very, very clear how people with disability are selected for this grant. And we don't have any number on how many PhD students with disability applies to a PhD. I don't have that information either. Sorry.
Any question? The people online, if you have any question. I go with a question, Virginia Vanessa. How can we explain the majority of women?
There is some hypothesis. We cannot explain it scientifically, but we have some hypotheses that the study fields there were more women, like psychological is a study field with more women, education is a study field with more women. So that's one hypothesis. Another hypothesis is that women tend to look for help more than men. It's a gender thing. So maybe because women tend to go for help more, they went to that training more than men. And that's the two hypotheses we have for now. But we actually need to look further to have a more scientific answer to give you.
Do you mean humanities disciplines are more sensitive to EDI than other disciplines?
Excuse me, can you repeat the question? I didn't understand it.
Do you think, or do you mean that humanities, social science, if you prefer, are more sensitive to EDI, to equality, diversity, inclusion, than other disciplines? Let's say.
I don't know about that. I don't know if it's true or not, I can say.
Okay, any other question online or here? I have one more. I wanted to hear you about the invisible disabilities. What are the main difference for people? I mean, from the point of view of perception at the university, from their comrades or from even the administration, is there any difference between invisible disabilities or visible? Is there more suffering? I mean,
we can't really compare if a person with a certain disability is more suffering than another person with another disability. I think it's not fair to compare. But one of the main difficulty with invisible disability is that it's not visible. So people in front of people with invisible disabilities don't know about the disability and may think sometimes if they can't do something, maybe they're lazy, maybe they don't work too so hard as they should, or maybe they're just not good enough. And so there can be a bias about how they're seen. So that's the bad thing about the invisible disability. The good one maybe is that it's invisible, so it adds its perks too, because you can appear as an able person and maybe not be unfairly put out of a field of research, you can, with some strategies, do things so people would not know you are disabled. Is it a good strategy or is it a bad strategy? I can say each person can choose, but yeah, it has its perks and it has its constraints too, and for each person is different. And the big difficulty, I think, with an invisible disability is that it's hard to make it official, and it's hard for other people to recognize the disability, because okay, you can walk, you can speak, you can hear, so what's the problem? I don't understand. For people, most people, they have this bias that if you're not in a wheelchair, if you're not totally blind or not totally ear deaf, you're not disabled, so you don't need any help, any support. So it's a long work with all the people around the student with disability to make it official and to make it known, and that everybody understand the difficulties that the student faces. And those difficulties are less simple, maybe. Someone who can't walk in France, actually, they can have access with a wheelchair, and there is some help to go to, there is some ascensors and everything. Not in every schools, but most of the time, they can find a solution. And it's, or people will go to them and ask them if they could help, because they can see the difficulty. But with invisible disability, people can't see, and so they will not come to help by themselves, and they will not know what the person needs.
Last question, but
Yeah.
quickly. Do you think universities are addressing the inequalities causes more than only to focus on the consequences?
Oh no, we don't have any data that says that university focuses on that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you again, Virginie, Vanessa.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You know, with our next presentation, with Ludovic. Ludovic is here, I guess.
Yes, I am.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Ludovic.
I am here. I can share my slides.
Floor is yours.
Okay, so everyone can hear me well? Yes?
Ludovic, I don't know if you plan to do or not, but can you just introduce yourself? Because I think
Yes,
it's
of course.
from your
Yes.
point of view. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So, well, thanks to you, Sofiane, thanks to the organizers for allowing me to share some part of my work in this conference today. So I'm Ludovic Joc, so this is written here. I'm a sociologist. I defended a PhD in 2019 about a topic not related to the topic of today, about humanitarian activities and about Doctors Without Borders in particular. I'm then associate researcher to the laboratory where I defended or where I wrote my PhD. And now I'm in between the academic field and also still the humanitarian activities since I have a part-time contract with Doctors Without Borders. But my intervention of today is based on an article that is about to be published. Actually, the journal has been waited for has been waiting for like 1 year and still more months to publish it because they do not have much space in the VARIA category, but I'm hoping that it will be published like in the coming months. It was actually this article. This article is or will be entitled Dependency, so the same title as the presentation today, Dependency, Vulnerability and Harassment at University, PhD Supervision through the Lens of Care. So we will see, I will focus on this notion of care in my presentation. So it will be issued in the next volume of the Canadian Journal for the Study of Adult Education, supposedly early 2025 in volume 37, number 1, okay. And currently you can have a version in French available on a platform. This is a French platform called HAL, and I hope like today or tomorrow there will be also the English version of this article available. So the idea of today for me is to share with you the main arguments of this article. Okay. And the main idea of this article is to say that the PhD students present a certain amount or a certain number of vulnerabilities and a form of dependency that the PhD supervisor is supposed to mitigate through a position of care. And that this position of care or this behavior of care is not always present, and that in such situation, when this behavior of care is not present, the PhD student must find or has to find substitute care, or we can also call it care of substitution, like other people to help the PhD student. So first, regarding the definition of care, I use the one of French researchers, according to which care is not only a highly specialized curative activity, because like often we think of nurses that take care of patients, of doctors that take care of patients, but according to them, and some other sociologists and not only French, so this is not only related to curative activity, but it can also be understood as a set of material, technical, and relational activities, consisting more broadly or more generally of providing a concrete response to the needs of others. Care, in this sense, or in other words, is a relationship, or can be seen as a relationship of service, of support, and of assistance, involving a sense of responsibility for the life and well-being of others. So as you can see, like not only a relationship between nurse and patient, but much more. This need for care actually is or can be, we can think, or this is my assumption at least, that this is mentioned under different forms in PhD charters. For example, at the French university called PSL, Paris Sciences et Lettres, the PhD charter mentions what is written here. The PhD supervisor must offer a personal and adapted follow-up, commit to regular meetings with the PhD student under his or her responsibility, support the PhD student for the dissemination of his or her research work. In another PhD charter, but you can find it in many PhD charter, so at Paris-Saclay, for example, another university, the PhD supervisor must build a constructive and positive relationship with the PhD student, encourage them in their work, develop their skills, help them, etc. Yes? Sofiane? No?
Sometimes we don't really hear you. Do you have
Sorry?
any connection
Oh,
issue?
I'm sorry.
No, 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 it's fine. No, it's
Mm, just
no, it's
just right now, it was writing to me. It's unstable, but before it was not.
okay.
So you can
Perfect.
hear me well again?
Yeah, yeah, keep going.
Okay. So I was saying, just I repeat in 2 words. So in all, like let's say, in all the PhD charters that I read, there is this kind of sentence showing or saying how much the PhD supervisor must take care of the PhD student. Okay. So my article and the presentation of today is actually based on a single case study between a PhD student that I will call Lily for today and her supervisor. This single case study is based on an interview with Lily, on email exchanges between Lily and her supervisor, and on Lily's logbook or diary, what she wrote through her PhD. The idea of this single case study is to be a way, or to see this case study as a way for revealing situations actually shared by other PhD students. This is a single case study in which the care situation or the expected situation of care did not go as planned. So I will first study the different factors of the different factors of dependence on her director, on her PhD director. In a second part, I will highlight the signs showing that the behavior of care of the PhD supervisor was absent, or even that the supervisor took advantage of the vulnerability or the vulnerabilities of her PhD student. I have described this attitude of that the care was missing. I described it as discare. And in a third part, I will discuss how a PhD student can benefit or not from substitute care by friends, by the monitoring committee, by his or her family, or by the institution. Okay, before going a bit further, so as soon as the connection doesn't work, please, Sofiane, raise your hand so that. Okay. So first, the different factors of dependence. Some examples. So, of course, Lily doesn't gather all these factors of dependence, but she was gathering some of them, and this is what I will show now. And also, it will be like an echo to what you described at the really beginning of this morning in the presentation of the conference today. Okay, so first, Lily didn't know much about the academic sector. So this is not the case. It depends. Sometimes you can have students that really know well the academic sector, sometimes not. It depends on the disciplines. It depends on the age when you start the PhD, where you come from, your nationality, the country where you live. But still, in her case, so no one among her friends or her family had done a PhD before, or knew about the sociological discipline, which was her discipline of PhD. So her socialization to the discipline depended, in her case, a lot on her PhD supervisor. Another factor of dependence was the fact that her project, and this is the case for quite a lot, I think, of PhD students in sociology, it was the topic of her PhD involved her self-fulfillment. And so in other cases in human sciences, the PhD topic can be a fundamental topic for this person, a topic that allows this person to give a meaning to his or her life. And I can take my example. For example, my topic of PhD was about Doctors Without Borders, about humanitarian activities, and this is precisely also I needed to give a meaning to what I was doing in the humanitarian sector, and it was the same for Lily. and this is written in the article, even if there are in the article it says that she wanted to better understand the sector or the professional sector in which she was working before. Also, when I say that it potentially involves self-fulfillment, it's also the idea that to get a PhD can be for some people a way to climb the social ladder, to the social hierarchy, or escape one's social status. Also, when we write a PhD, most of the time, it can be discussed and depends on the countries, etc. But the diploma depends on the opinion on a single person. There is not a college of professors who supervise the PhD students and the achievement and the follow-up of a PhD. It depends most of the time on only one person. In France now we have an individual monitoring committee called CSI, but as we will see later, in the case of Lily, at least it was limited. Also, especially in human science or in human and social science, there is often a lack of funding. And it was the case of Lily. She didn't have any funding to write her PhD. So in sociology, it's like among 50% of the students, so it changed a little bit over the time, but like 50% of the students do not have funding for or direct funding from the university to write their PhD. So often the PhD students will have to find another job, will have a reduced time to devote to the PhD, and will then need a closer supervision. Also, when you don't have funding, you quite often, and it was the case of Lily, have a lower legitimacy towards the research community. Because if you have got a PhD contract by the university, it means already that you have already succeeded in a way, a first step in the PhD adventure. Also, when you don't have funding, or we can say on the contrary, when you have funding, you have usually an easier access to teaching. In France, sometimes the PhD contract is related, or with the PhD contract, you have the opportunity to teach. And when you don't have this contract, it can be more difficult to find teaching opportunities. Also, when you have a PhD contract, it's more difficult for the PhD supervisor to get rid of you during the PhD adventure. And when you don't have the funding, okay, no one will pay attention that your PhD supervisor will get rid of you. So there is also a higher risk in this situation. Also, another factor of dependency is the accountability to the supervisor, and it can take different forms. For example, sometimes it can happen that and it was the case of Lily, that Lily, for example, had to change her PhD supervisor during her PhD, which means that the second PhD supervisor, which is the one we are talking about in the article, there is a kind of accountability or a debt to the PhD supervisor that saved, in a way, Lily, and that allowed her to continue her PhD. Also, you can have a kind of debt when you have a PhD contract for which your PhD supervisor helped. It was not the case of Lily, but this can be also a factor of accountability to the supervisor. Also, when the supervisor is famous in the discipline, you also can have a kind of accountability. Also, when you come from abroad, from, let's say, countries from the southern part of the world, and you have the opportunity to come to France or to Europe or to Northern America to get a PhD, this is a rare opportunity, and then you are also, in a way, you can also be accountable to your supervisor. Another factor that was in the case of Lily, the emotional closeness. So I can explain a little bit what I mean by it. But there are different possibilities for this closeness. For example, when you get along well, when you like your PhD in a way, when you come from the same region of the world, or when you come from the same region of the country where you study. So in the case of Lily, it was not the case, but the other PhD students that were under the supervision of the PhD supervisor of Lily, they all come from the same region. So there was a kind of relationship and closeness in this situation. Also, when you have common passions, like you like the same sport, you like the same cultural activity, anything can also make you closer to your PhD supervisor. Also, something that is maybe specific to the countries where there are two ways of saying you, like the polite one, the formal one, and the friendly one. There is an ambiguity. So in French, you have tu, the colloquial, the friendly you, and you have vous, this is the formal one. And there is an ambiguity in the sense that usually the use of vous, the formal one, allows less proximity. But when you use tu, like it was the case in the situation of Lily, the tu, the friendly you, increases the possibility or allows the possibility of a management based on affect, based on emotion, with a possibility sometimes, and it's shown by different studies, with a possibility for blackmail or harassment. More easily, at least. It doesn't mean that when you say vous, you don't have harassment, but at least there is a relationship. Okay, so that was the first part. Okay, I see that I have 12 minutes left. So what I'm trying to say is that these different factors of dependence can take the form of a necessary and potentially positive relationship. This is the child dependence. This is the idea that we have two kinds of dependence. We have the child dependence, and we have to take care of the child. This is the dependence of learning, the dependence of construction, etc. But the factors of dependence can also be transformed into a product of a constraining relationship. And this is the slave dependence. So we can see the two faces of dependence. In the case of Lily, we had a supervisor, a PhD supervisor, who took advantage of the factors of dependency and therefore of the vulnerabilities of Lily. The PhD supervisor did not achieve her expected, it was a woman, her expected work of care. And this is what I called, as I said, discare. So first, there was a distended scientific monitoring. Lily, for example, sent numerous reminders to get appointments, to get just a follow-up, but she had got to wait up to 1 year to get one appointment. Most of Lily's emails stayed unanswered. There was also forms of guilt by the PhD supervisor about Lily's expectations for a closer follow-up and about administrative procedures. For example, when she was saying, but I would like for, after some unanswered emails, when she was saying that she wanted again a meeting to talk about her PhD, then the PhD supervisor was orally, verbally in the research center, telling her that she was stressed. For example, also when she was exceeding or not respecting the deadlines for registration at the university, like the third, the fourth, the fifth year, etc. And it was due to the PhD supervisor that was late and that was not answering her emails. The PhD supervisor wrote by email, it's you it's your registration. My role is to sign the documents, and I will do that this afternoon, like after many emails without answers. And then you must not confuse my goodwill with subordination. So this is just an example of the forms of guilt that Lily had to suffer. Also, dependence transformed into humiliation or forms of humiliation. For example, the PhD supervisor of Lily asked her to untangle cables under her desk. So Lily had to untangle the cables at the feet of the PhD supervisor. Also, the PhD supervisor, after many emails not answered, and when they met, Lily and the supervisor met in the corridors, then the supervisor asked finally Lily to print the PhD thesis that she had sent many times, but she asked the PhD supervisor asked her to print it in a printer just in front of her. Also, the PhD supervisor asked Lily to buy her coffees. She asked Lily to write emails instead of her, just random emails, but she asked Lily to write the emails instead of her. Also, when Lily wanted to participate in seminars, in conferences, etc., the PhD supervisor in these cases asked her, "But why do you register to this conference?" Or, "I wouldn't have chosen this title in front of other researchers." So this is the repeated scientific questioning. Okay, and all this participates in what I call a situation of discare. Then, in this situation, to alleviate or avoid the suffering and the discare, Lily's suffering and the discare, we could think of some possible safeguards. So, for example, the individual monitoring committee that we talked before, the director of the research center, the director of the graduate school, the representative of the PhD students, relative, family, friends, other researchers, other PhD students, etc. But what I will try to show here is how much these safeguards were limited. So first, or maybe it's not in the right order, but okay, no, even before the individual monitoring committee, just for example, when she tried to participate in conferences or when she tried to teach in the university, okay, it allows you to socialize with the discipline or with the issues of your PhD, but it does not replace a full PhD supervision or a full proofreading by the PhD supervisor. Also, when you are reviewed by peers, the peers stay limited in their review, in their proofreading, by their availability, of course, by the time that they have, and also by the fear of interfering in the supervision of the PhD supervisor. Then the individual monitoring committee also was in a way, or is in a way limited. In the case of Lily, the members of the individual monitoring committee was made of friends of the PhD supervisor, so it's difficult to share your difficulties with friends of your PhD supervisor. Supposedly, a time is dedicated for a direct discussion between the members of the individual monitoring committee and the PhD students without the PhD supervisor. But in the case of Lily, there was not this possibility in the first individual monitoring committee. And 1 year later, there was this possibility. But then Lily was shy, etc. And she didn't dare to share her difficulties with the other researchers. Then the director of the research center and the director of the graduate school, also they might be friends of the PhD supervisor. That was not really the case with Lily, but it can happen. If these people are not friends with the PhD supervisor, there is actually no reason why these directors should give more credit to the voice of the PhD student than to the one of the PhD supervisor. The PhD student, in this case Lily, and Lily had to do it. She had to provide to the director of the research center and the director of the graduate school proofs that there was a situation of discare, which means that the burden of proof, who has to prove what, is not is on the burden of proof is on the prosecutor, is on the here. Or the burden of proof was not on the PhD supervisor, but on Lily. Also, for now, there seems to be a fear from research center directors to get a bad reputation, to get a bad fame on his or her research center due to the recognition of a situation of harassment in her or his research center. And that could be the contrary. And this is the contrary, for example, in humanitarian activities, in Doctors Without Borders, this is precisely the contrary. There is a fear of shame, let's say, if the situations of harassment are not investigated. But at least at the time of Lily, it was the contrary. It was better not to investigate because we fear the bad reputation that situation of harassment could generate. Okay. Also, friends and family can provide support, but they are generally not able to proofread and correct a PhD thesis. The PhD student's representative can also help, but this person also has a precarious status and a possible career to lead and to protect his or her future. He or she cannot afford to be seen as a troublemaker. So that the PhD representative, the PhD student's representative also has some limits to support, and it was the case of Lily. And finally, the horizontally between, okay, and also there was this possibility of the support by other researchers of the research center. But the thing is that this is often reclassified as a scientific disagreement. For example, I write in my article, and I will read it, the horizontality between researchers, which offers creativity and independence, allows at the same time freedom in the supervision of PhD students. Which means that on the pretext that creativity requires originality, the consequence is that tolerance for deviant behavior, antipathy, or lack of sociability, so the tolerance for discare, is increased. Moreover, the accusations in discare are regularly disqualified on the pretext that they actually reflect different epistemological visions. And in several recent cases of harassment or defamation at the university, it's this argument of scientific disagreements that has been put forward by the defense to justify the conflict between the PhD students and the PhD supervisor. Okay. Conclusion. So in my article, the main conclusion is to simply say that those who can get out of a situation of discare, that can go till the defense of the PhD in a situation of discare, of harassment, etc., are the most privileged. Those who are, even before the PhD adventure, provided with the highest financial, cultural, and social capital, which shows once more how education induces social reproduction, but especially in this case, the PhD adventure. Thank you.
Thank you, Ludovic. Thank you very much, Ludovic, for your presentation. I just want to add something about your presentation, because not everyone is familiar with the idea of CSI, especially in our partners countries, in universities. The CSI is Individual Monitoring Committee. which basically each PhD has to do. You just go in front of a jury and they just look at your progress. And there is also a space to, if you want to speak up about harassment and your relation with your supervisor. So that's the CSI Ludovic was talking about.
It's that issue.
Yeah, before any question, Ludovic, I already asked you, but coming from a STEM background, I wanted you to share a few words about this transition from engineer, because you used to be engineer, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And then you did a PhD in sociology.
Yes.
You did a full reconversion, totally different. So can you explain how you came to this, to sociology or to this transition? Because generally there are two different, very different disciplines. I think it might be interesting.
Yeah, in a few words, actually, I didn't know anything about sociology. I didn't have any classes about sociology during my engineering studies, nothing. But I first I worked a little bit as an engineer, a little bit as a consultant in private companies. But then I started to work for Doctors Without Borders, so in the humanitarian sector, and this is faced with numerous, I don't know if this is problems, but at least contradictions in the field, and I had many questions. So I could not understand what I was doing. I liked the humanitarian sector. I liked the people I was working with, but I was facing too many questions to keep my motivation. And to keep my motivation to work in this sector, I needed answers to my questions because I was not prepared. Because there are also many people in this field, in the humanitarian sector, that are prepared and that at least have thought a little bit in advance to the questions I was facing. And then among the possibilities I had to answer this question, I wrote to several PhD supervisors, and at least I had different contacts, but at least one believed in my questions, and then this is how I started. Administratively, I also had a master that allowed me to enter in sociology, but I must say that I didn't know anything, that it was a quite difficult adventure at the beginning because I didn't know anything about the discipline, about the authors, etc. But I finally made it.
Congrats, Ludovic. Is there any question from the audience online?
Yeah, maybe I have one. Thank you. Yeah, first, thank you very much, Ludovic, for the presentation. It was very interesting and you highlight really important point. My question is about the context. I mean, PhD students, when they start working on their PhD projects, they often join a team or research lab, or you call it as you want. And this is very, very important. I mean, to deal with several problems because they are often, in interaction with older PhD students and with other professors, and it's a context that facilitates. I mean, it's much easier to speak about a problem when you have been working, eating with people, you know. And do you think that can reduce all the problems you highlight in your presentation?
I'm not sure to have understood everything. So no, please, maybe in one sentence, if you can summarize the question.
How important is the research team for the PhD student?
Okay. What is it? It will be my opinion, huh? But my opinion, and especially also a little bit relying on the situation of Lily. of course, this is really important, and but what can I say? Yes, what I try to show in this article, and this is not new, this is the ambivalence of a team, and I guess we can experience it with our family, with our friends. There is also always an ambivalence. There is a support, the possibility of a support, but also there is the possibility of suffering. So the team is really important, and this is also why maybe when you have a broad team and a wide team, when you are in big research centers, uh, it has advantage. Well, it has disadvantages, but it has also the advantage in the case of this care. It has this advantage to have more probabilities to find a support, to find friends, to have researchers in post that can help you. And yeah, your question makes me think that when you have a tiny research center and you are in a position of harassment, it can be more difficult to find support. So I don't know if I'm really answering your question, but
Yes. Yeah, because sometimes, there are some problems not new. For example, I have this experience, not myself, but PhD student had this problem. But the supervisor was well known for this kind of problem. So it was much easier or less difficult to speak with the other PhD students. This is what I mean. I think that the team can help in this
yeah,
situation.
but the thing in Lily's situation is that the people, the PhD students, the other researchers, they feared. They feared for their reputation because this is a tiny area. They all work not only in the same research laboratory, but also what I mean is that at least for the PhD students, the precarious situation and the fact that it will be difficult to access to a permanent position as a researcher after the PhD, it induces the fact that it's better not to ne pas faire de vagues. It's better not to have a bad reputation, and to avoid having a bad reputation, you should avoid conflicts. And this is also why it was difficult for the other PhD students to support Lily. For the researchers in post, it was a bit more possible, but the thing is that in this situation, the director of the research center was not really supportive. He was supportive. He supported Lily in trying to pressurize the PhD supervisor. But at one point, the other researchers of the research center, they wanted to also pressurize the PhD supervisor because they all knew about the situation. But the director of the research center said no to the other researchers, no, please stop everything, because this is what I said, he was afraid of the bad reputation that his research center could get.
Thank you very much.
I had different questions, but it's time, Ludovic. So thank you very much again for your presentation. It's time for a break, 15 minutes break, and see you in 15 minutes
Thank you.
for the next presentation.
Hai detto l'ho scritto, direi.
L'hai scritto, ok, ma visto che qui adesso con questa nuova gestione dei nostri seminari in automatico poi mandiamo anche un avviso su Genoa Hall.
Sì.
Volevo chiederti un breve test, perché io ci ho scritto testo dell'email che si vuole inviare a Genoa Hall.
Sì, ok, però possiamo metterci tutti e due i meeting.
Perché questo è specifico di questo seminario.
Ah, ok, va bene, e poi lo faccio simile per il mio, sì. Me lo mandi?
Mi dovresti mandare tu qualche cosa, cioè perché io ci scrivo, la professoressa terrà un seminario dal titolo Pinco Pallo nell'ambito delle attività del progetto EDIRE.
Sì, e ti mando il link. Mandami il messaggino così te lo completo.
Sì, ecco, me lo completo.
Hello everyone, we are back. Thank you. So Next is the third presentation with Stephanie Kayes, Vice President in Reims. She's gonna introduce herself by herself. So welcome, Stephanie. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning. So I'm Stephanie Kayes. I'm professor in psychology here at the University of Reims, and I'm vice president for gender equality and the fight against discrimination. So today I will talk about critical well-being issue for PhD students, the importance of having a clear reporting procedure for harassment, sexism, discrimination, and violence in university. We'll focus at the end of the case of the University of Reims. So PhD students have multiple positions in the academic hierarchy. They are between autonomy and dependence, which often make them more vulnerable because of that. They are student and new researcher. They have one or two advisor, supervisor, as you want, and so they have a great vulnerability of harassment, discrimination than other staff in university. So a clear and accessible reporting procedure are needed for assure to them a safer and inclusive environment. So this is my defense today. Sorry. In France, to support this goal, to give a safer and more inclusive environment, national legislation provides a framework for monitoring PhD students. So, law passed in 2026 required the establishment of individual monitoring committee for each PhD student. This committee have to meet annually to detect earlier the issue, the potential issues, and to avoid escalating problems. So the role of this individual monitoring committee is to first track the progress of doctoral research, but also to ensure students' well-being and address potential issues like ethical conduct or conflict with advisors, supervisors. To ensure impartiality, this committee should include faculty members who are external to the students' research team. PhD students have a dedicated time for discussions with these external members, so they could relate their experience regarding discrimination, harassment, or other problematic behaviors with these specific external members who are not supposed to be in the same research field. According to a 2023 study, a survey realized by France PhD. This is a national network of PhD. 86% of PhD students are satisfied with their monitoring committee. 95% of them believe that the committee is vigilant in identifying any form of conflict, discrimination, moral or sexual harassment, or sexist behavior. At URCA, for example, several issues were addressed through this committee. In the last 3 years, around 5 cases have been reported by committees, but none of them concerns discrimination or sexual and gender-based violence. Usually it's around conflict with advisor or some problem with partner. We can be surprised, at least, by the fact that we have no report regarding discrimination or sexual and gender-based violence. It's likely that PhD students experience the same rate as other population regarding this discrimination. So we can look at another survey in last year. This is a survey conducted by National Observatory of SGB, sexual gender-based violence. It covered around 3% of PhD students. Okay, this survey indicates that 23 of them, of PhD students, have been witness have been witness or victim of harassment, discrimination during their PhD within their lab. Okay, so 23% of 3% of French PhD students. 40% of them reported inappropriate behaviors or sexual and gender-based violence in the partner context, among those who worked with partners, academic or private fieldwork. 5% of all the respondents reporting having been victims in the context of conference. Women and non-binary individuals are overrepresented among the victims. So, we know that we have some discrimination issues or sexual or sexist misconduct in PhD environment, but none of them are reported by individual committee, at least in our university. So an additional whistleblower system appears necessary that we can see with the survey. It's that the issues are not always only between the PhD student and the advisor. We have problem or issue in the context of a lab. With external partners or in the scientific conference. So the problem cannot be only between the advisor and the PhD student. And the fact that the issues are in a broader context make the advisor, the lab director, the committee, or even the graduate school, the doctoral school, not always suitable points of contact. A more independent reporting procedure could be useful, where the PhD student and all the university, the committee can file reports in a confidential, independent procedure. Many students hesitate to report incidents due to fear of retaliation or lack of trust in this closely connected system, so they can use online reporting platforms. So several universities in France have implemented this online procedure with listening units, independent listening units, where students or staff can seek help in case of problematic behaviors. This platform provides a safe outlet that offer with their listening units a secure and confidential space that is crucial in academic environment, and especially for PhD students where power dynamics can make it difficult to speak out. They encourage reporting. They help overcoming barriers, fear, lack of trust, by offering anonymous or confidential reporting systems. They provide support and guidance. Listening units can provide structure or help students to access necessary resources in case of mental health issues. And finally, this platform can promote accountability by tracking and analyzing reporting incidents. Institutions can identify patterns and implement preventive measures. So this platform can be a complementary tool for PhD students in addition to graduate school, individual committee, the lab. There can be an independent procedure for that student can use in case of problem, as maybe some related by Ludovic this morning. So this is our procedure. As you can see, we have an address that student or staff can use and file report either anonymous or with their name. Their report are forwarded to listening units. People with professional secrecy can contact the people who file a report and give them an interview to see what is the problem and to propose them resource in case of mental health issues. They made a report of the interview that they can transfer to the reporting officer. The reporting officer is a professor of criminal science that have to qualify legally the nature of the issue, discrimination or sexist. behavior or whatever. And depending on the severity of the case, the reporting officer gives the report to the president of the university and or to the reporting unit for follow-up. So the president can take measures like protection measure for the victim, can make some decision regarding administrative investigation or disciplinary action, can report the fact to the public prosecutor or to take preventive measures if necessary. During the procedure, the listening units, keep the victim informed of the action taken following the report. So this is some number regarding our procedure. The new procedure has been implemented in 2023. And so you can see here the number of reports given by students of all the university. So you can see that this number increased between 2023 and 2024. And you can see the number of reports for PhD students, 0 in 2023 and 3 in 2024. Last month, we had one more in 2025. The communication surrounding our platform is leading to an increase in reports. So this is a new platform, so it takes time to be used by people. This academic year platform was presented during the welcome day of new PhD students to inform them that they can use this platform for problematic issues or misconduct. Maybe I should precise something that the three reports we observed in 2024, one of them was with external partner. One of them was harassment report with advisor. And I think one was in the lab, in the context of the lab. So, in conclusion, to conclude, for a safer and more inclusive academic environment, PhD students have the possibility to refer to their graduate school, to their external member of individual monitoring committee, and in case of maybe more confidential aspects related to sexual harassment or some other discrimination, they can use reporting online platform. This platform prevent misconduct. When people know that they can have a report in a platform, I mean, it's like a moderation of their misconducting. So we hope that maybe with the years, some problem could disappear or will be less frequent? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephanie. If there is any question in the audience or online, please feel free. No question? One, I have a question. If, Stephanie, if 23% of PhD students have been victim or witnessed harassment or discrimination, as you said, just to understand, how is it possible none of them reported on the individual committee, as you said previously? There were no report on the CSI, what we call CSI, which is individual committee. As you said, there's no report. And on the same time, you have 93% of them, they are satisfied with the individual committee. I mean, those numbers shows there is something here, something we are missing. I mean, point of view of research or survey, that's what I mean. Probably they don't go, because if we have 23% victim and non-report, something is missing. What do you think about that?
Okay, so this is 23% of 3% of respondent. I mean, this is not 23% of PhD students. This is 23% of 3% of respondents to the survey, first. Secondly, the survey asked about all the PhD time. I mean, it's not like here just 2 years. It's during all the time. So this is for the number. I think that the committee is not the place for students to speak about more sensitive things like discrimination or sexual misconduct. I think it's not the place, and because I guess, I'm not sure, but the external number are professor. I mean, it's not easier for people to speak about with a professor in a context professional regarding discrimination of the sexual misconduct or harassment or something like that. I think this is why online reporting procedure is really, from my point of view, needed. Because it's not a professional interaction. I mean, in the listening unit, we have people who can receive the talk of sensitive things.
Thank you. Any question?
We might have some online.
Yes. Can you hear me? This is Ludovic.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. No, I had just two questions. First, I didn't know that this kind of processes could exist in universities. So first, thank you for this presentation. And I have two questions about this. Is there a legal obligation of universities to implement this kind of processes? So this is the first question. And the second question is that if not or yes, does it already exist in like, let's say, all French universities, and even does it exist in other countries? This kind of process, I mean the process of reporting.
Yes, the process of reporting is an obligation in France, in the university. I'm not sure it's required that the procedure should be online, but each university has to implement it to have a reporting procedure. I don't know for the other country, so I don't know.
Nice.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Any question?
May I come in? Marina is speaking from Sarajevo.
No, Marina.
Hello.
Hello, thank you so much for great presentation, and I'm quite positively surprised by the fact that you established a mechanism to report any type of sexual harassment or abuse. I'm wondering about process. When somebody report, then what is coming next, and how you make sure that that person is kind of protect during the process of proving whether discrimination happened or not. So probably it will take some time. And then I don't know how you make sure that that student or professor gets a proper sensitivity and protection and some type of like animus reporting in a way that other steps are not influencing his or her position at the university at the moment, while the kind of prosecutor or whoever comes with a final decision.
Okay. I'm not sure I correctly understood, but in some case, the president, according to the report, can take what we call in France conservative decisions. So that means that we believe the student. I mean, we decide to believe the student and to protect him or her independently of the administrative investigation at the first place. And after we have the administrative investigation or the legal investigation, and we will decide after. But the first decision can be a conservative measure. This is your question, or I'm not sure I answered.
Yes, thank you so much. I understood basically you could have a legal official case, probably with like legal authorities, and also you can proceed with administrative procedure at your university. And I'm quite happy to learn that you basically listen and believe to students in advance, basically without any like fact-checking.
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you so much. Over.
Yes. In some case where we have rape, for example, and so and we have our administrative decision and legal decision, and the time is sometimes very long. So.
Any question? Oh, Angela.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation, and thank to the group of Reims, and in particular Sofian, for the organization of this interesting meeting. I want only to ask, in a comparison with UNIGE, I am Taramasso from University of Genoa. The problem is that we have information correlated to the events that are not exposed, and then you have the problem of the underground information that is very difficult to arrive and to define. I don't know if in your case it is possible to improve this activity, increasing the communication, increasing the security of to put in safe the people that as object of violence or harassment and so on. To answer at the question of Marina, for instance, hi Marina, the question is that, for instance, in Genoa, unfortunately, we had one of the new type of harassment, the cybernetic harassment, and we have adopted a procedure very strong that now this professor is out of the staff of UNIGE. Now, probably there will be also a process, then other legal aspects that are outside of the university, but inside the university, we have immediately closed the ratio with this professor that was component officer of the staff, not a people with a not formal contract, okay? Then it is possible. And it's very important that our students know, students of master, bachelor, or PhD, knows that it's possible to receive support inside of the university. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Angela, just to be more specific, is it before any investigation? Even before this investigation started?
Yes, before the investigation, it was a procedure inside the university. Then, in parallel, there is the institutional, the external for the police investigation. Because we have the documentation that the students present, documentation that was not possible to evaluate that this fact doesn't happen.
Okay.
That it was a very terrible fact. We arrived at all newspaper in Italy as the University of Genoa with a professor that utilized the face, the image of the face of the students for, as you can say, porn, video, and so on.
Okay.
All using artificial intelligence.
Oh, okay.
This is one of the problems that, fortunately for this negative events, now the European Commission publish a specific directive that this type of action is possible that to penalty with administrative or monetary funds and so on. It is exists now this type of harassment. Harassment, cyber and internet condition.
So you won't get any funds if you have any low charge or index about harassment or discrimination.
Yes, that is a specific. It's necessary that we always, I see now, for instance, now, sexual or moral or cybernetic harassment. It is necessary that we insert, unfortunately, also this new type of harassment, because it is not physical violence, but sometimes is more difficult that this young woman overcame this terrible problem.
But I mean, it's between students or?
No, student and professor. And in fact, we put away from the university this professor.
Any question? I have one question. Well, it's quite close to what Angela was saying. The reporting to institution is something. It's not neutral. It's complicated, and it's an additional mental burden for a population, PhD students, or even any students anyway, that are already vulnerable population uh, how can we um, make the mechanism, or how can we work maybe before to make it less complicated for those people? Because at the end, they're going to feel they are responsible for something. They didn't do anything, of course, but at the end, they feel they are responsible. They did something, and they can suffer consequences, of course, as Angela was saying, as Stephanie was saying. You can control all the information on a university, so everyone might know at one time.
Yes.
It's a yes, I know it's a long question.
It's a long question. How can we prevent them for all this misconduct behavior? I mean, maybe at the institutional level. So we need a clear policy I mean, maybe to train supervisor about discrimination or misconduct behavior. We need a clear procedure for reporting. Maybe we can work at the lab level to improve the climate, the environment, creating a supportive and inclusive lab, encouraging open communication between supervisor and students. Maybe we can also promote peer support networks between PhD, because this network can also be a problem sometimes, but maybe we can work on all of these levels to improve. I think that the point, the key point is the training and the formation of the advisors, supervisors regarding their to stay professional and to have professional behaviors.
Thank you, Stephanie. Let's move on to the roundtable. Before that, I want to thank you all the speakers. It was really interesting, and it brings awareness about EDI and a lot of issues. What we've been discussing now is the risk for our academies in Europe is to create the academic factory. And that's something not that so far. What is academic factory? It's like any factory worker. Basically, the PhD, the worker at the university, they are becoming like labor work, like a factory. They depend on supervisors. They under precarious contract. They perform unpaid and invisible work, a lot of invisible work. About that, I'm thinking. She's not working at the university or studying here, but I want to thank my wife for the poster, because she did this poster. That's domestic work, and invisible and unpaid work. But thank you to her. I just wanted to say thanks. So let's move on to the roundtable. Everyone is here online. I'm expecting Marina. I'm expecting from Uniji. Yes. Can you say hi?
Do you hear me?
Yes, the person participating to the roundtable. Can you say hi? Okay, Julia. Yes, okay. Thank you. Yeah, Julia?
Yes, it's me.
Yes, perfect. Perfect. Thank you, Julia. Marina, are you here?
Yes, I'm online and I'm waiting for moderator to kick off the conversation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Marina. Thank you. I'm going to ask you just before you start the talk, how is it going to work? I'm going to ask a question. You're free to answer. You're free to discuss the answers. And please just introduce yourself for answering to the question. So I'm going to go with the first question. At the end, there were going to be, of course, a session of questions if you want to ask anything. I wanted to go back to the paradox of doctoral training. And my main question is, how can we reconcile the advanced skill sets of PhD candidates with the precarious conditions and social vulnerabilities they often face? How can we reconcile the advanced skill sets of PhD candidates with the precarious condition and social vulnerabilities they often face? One answer to that. Oh, maybe je la mets à l'écran. Wait, I'm going to put the questions on screen. I think this question. So again, the question are about the interventions. So again, how can we reconcile the advanced skill sets of PhD candidates with the precarious conditions and social vulnerabilities they often face? Yeah, it's working. Basically, to make the question more clear, I get it. Basically, as we've been saying, PhD candidates are high profile. They are experts on their fields. Well, they are almost professional. They are professional. At the university, they give classes, they do research, they have a lot of competences and skills. They are definitely professionals. And what's interesting in academia and universities is we refer to them as professionals sometimes for work, for lab work, for projects, and we refer to them as students sometimes. They might be excluded from power in meetings or institutions in universities, they can be out of the talks in a university. So they are students, they are basically students, and they are on the same time professional. And that's a kind of paradox. They have those two identities, because that's the point of universities. We are preparing students to work and to be professionals tomorrow. And as we've been saying, they are the future of academia. So we're not just preparing them to the outside world. We are preparing them to the inside world, which is universities, which is academia, with its own norms and rules. So, and on the same times, this high profile, which might be outside in a company, very respected, very valued. In universities, they face a lot of vulnerabilities. As we've been saying all this morning, different harassment, supervisors, foundings, money, mental health, harassment, and so many. And for women, they face specific and different problems. So how can we how can I say that? How can we make the bridge between those two more shorter, basically, between those professional, almost professional, and those vulnerabilities in a way of consideration and recognition? You can answer online or here from the panel.
Maybe I can begin to answer. Hello, everyone. I am Béatrice Marin. I'm Vice President of the University of Reims Champagne-Ardenne and for doctoral training. And I am also Vice President of the National Network of Doctoral Colleges called PhD France. I think I will come back on several things that be said this morning, because we have to replace the talk in the national legacy and the national statistics. Okay, so to answer to your question, Sofiane, your first question, how we can combine IELTS diploma and the vulnerability of the PhD student. I think the first thing we have to do is to fund PhD. Maybe you know that the funding is mandatory in the major part of domains or disciplines. Only social and human sciences can supervise PhD students without funding. I think that as it's the highest diploma, doctorate is a professional experience, so everybody must be funded for his or her thesis. It's the beginning of the recognition of the diploma and the quality of the diploma.
Thank you, Beatrice. Any follow-up on the panel? Feel free to.
Julia, please come in. I see that she raised a hand, but nobody could see her.
Yeah,
Oh, no,
I was trying to open the mic, but I'm here. Okay. If you can hear me, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. And first of all, thank you so much for having me this amazing morning. I really think these are topics we need to discuss like really in depth. And I'm Giulia Arena. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Genoa, and I work on gender equality policies in academia. So yeah, and I would like to elaborate a little bit more on the first question because I think that many key points have already been discussed in the conversation, but I would like to add my personal and also scientific insight about this. I really think we should invest more in a European labor academic market because right now what is asked for us as a researcher is to be competitive on the European market, but at the same time we are not protected as young researchers because, for example, there's no social security network that's available European-wide. So it's really dependent on the single nation. And I think that's really, it's a very big limitation in the creation of a competitive, but at the same time inclusive European market for the academics. And also because, for example, there is a lack of standardization, there is a lack of a framework for funding special, I don't really like to say special because they are really like normal vulnerabilities such as disabilities and having family duties, for example, or coming from the global south or other intersectional social identities that are not addressed in the funding programs in academia. And I really think we should create a more big and more wide framework, which is legal, but also policies addressing this kind of issues. Because if you create something that works on the bigger level, I think it's more easier to change the institutional culture of a single institution, which of course it's very difficult to change, but right now you don't have the framework to do it in depth regarding PhD students. So that's my take on the first question.
Thank you. Let's move on to the second question, if there is.
May I just add something on the first point?
Yeah, sure, of course.
Okay, thank you so much. This is Marina from Sarajevo School of Science and Technology, and I'm currently a PhD student. And I must admit that I'm probably a very unusual PhD student, given the fact that I have full-time job with one of UN agency in the country, and I used to be a journalist. So sorry for my tendency to moderate all of this discussion. I inherited that from my 20 years of working at TV station. So just to add that my ongoing dilemma is quite different than probably comparing to other students, especially PhD students, dilemmas and maybe financial insecurity connected with ethical standards and basically their autonomy when it comes to research. So having in mind that my current position is a head of program, that means that I collaborate with different stakeholders, with different NGOs, and basically I do oversight of budget lines, which could be spanned in different directions. Let's say Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, or specific CSO who is working on gender equality in the country. So then when you combine that role, that hat, with my academic hat, when I try to deep dive into female leadership in the country connected with implementation of family-friendly policies, some people, even my supervisors, could see that as a conflict of interest. And I do believe that I'm quite vulnerable in the situation when I present head of program of one UN agency with very high standards when it comes to accountability, conflict of interest, professionalism, and all of this. But also at the same time, this is a very small country. my research is going to the same direction of interest, combining with my professional life, where some of key stakeholders or some of key target group could overlap with my professional key target group. If I try to put it very, I'm hoping that I'm explaining this very clearly. So it's very thin line in a way to understand how to stay with your very high kind of ideas, how to present yourself, how to navigate with all of these challenges, how to escape from any type of nepotism or corruption connected with position of power, which is in certain sense head of program for some UN agency, and then also stay focused on research without all of these influences and potential interconnections, which might influence my ability to work objectively on specific issues. So I just want to share this with you because probably this position is unusual, but I also quite I appreciate and I'm jealous of people who are full-time PhD students, because then they have enough time to fully dedicate on specific research and topics and probably to engage more with their peers, which is very lonely place when you don't have that network and that support platforms for PhD students. But let me stop here. I would appreciate your reflections and potential advices. Thank you.
Thank you. Your situation is quite particular. First of all, your life was already set when you started your PhD, I guess, because you already had 20 years of journalism, right? So everything was already set and you had a high position. Even after on your new position, I guess it goes with a high salary. The people who are talking about in general, they are in precarious condition. That means when they start a PhD without foundings, they are not doing high position in a company. They're just working where they can, basically, and the salary is really not that good. So, and we have some PhD students. They're doing 2 jobs, maybe 3 jobs. That's a problem. Because and something particular I don't know about Sarajevo, but it depends in France about the disciplines. But in science, hard science, as we say, it's 3 years to do a PhD, 3 to 4 years to do a PhD, which is really a short time if you're working. In humanities and social science, it's more for 5 to 6 years. So it's a different condition. So exactly as you were saying, your condition is particular because you had the comfort to do your PhD without thinking maybe about the money. So you're less vulnerable to anything, to the relation we were talking about with your supervisor. Because when you don't have, you're not that autonomous financially. I mean, you're totally. I mean, you can't really say anything to a supervisor. You're more vulnerable. That's the situation we're talking about. So, what's been said just before about European funding, I'm totally agree with that. We should have something like that. And as we said earlier this morning, I told you PhD rose by 47% in China, 7 to 8% in United States, and 20 in India. So that means something. It means something. That's why when you go to the Silicon Valley in United States, you see a lot of Indian people. They did their PhD in their country, and then they went to United States. So if we miss the train now, it's going to be really hard to catch up, really. Next question. How can we translate the broad EDI principles? When I'm talking about the broad EDI, to make it clear, it's about everything you might know. about EDI, discrimination, gender issues, so equality, diversity, inclusion, to make it clear. How can we translate the broad EDI principles into concrete, okay, concrete, not just theory, enforceable guidelines for doctoral programs and training? So how can we translate the discrimination, harassment, vulnerability, depression? We've seen that 40% of PhD students are in a depressed condition. So how can we translate the broad EDI into concrete? What kind of measures or actions we can do for doctoral programs and training?
Maybe I can. But it's not. Okay. Maybe we can take measure like working on the implicit cognition of decision makers. So advisors like directors, so on, through training and awareness on cognitive bias. Maybe it will be useful. Improving research practice. Maybe it's another improvement. Using non-discriminatory language. Integrating sex or gender, depending, into research protocols. In the evaluation structures of research projects. Another way is to analyze data on academic careers based on gender, communicate about it, and try to find some corrective measures. Improving conditions by promoting work-life balance, offering flexible working hours, planning project tasks in advance for both men, women, and finally fighting the fight against discrimination, and so what I talked just about. Maybe it can be a way to decline for university to be more inclusive. I don't know how to begin. I think one of the solutions to put inclusion in higher education institutions is first of all the training in doctoral supervision. All institutions accredited to award the doctoral degree must offer training in doctoral supervision as stipulated in the decree of 2016, modified by the decree of 2022. There are many objectives to this training for doctoral supervision, but one is the awareness raising of the fight against harassment, discrimination, sexist and sexual violence. At the University of Reims Champagne-Ardenne, this training is not mandatory because colleagues don't want it. It is mandatory. So it's this formation, this training can be followed on a voluntary basis. However, we recommend to every colleague who wants to defend their EDIRE I know that it's a French diploma where EDIRE should follow it, but it's not mandatory. I think it's one of the solutions to colleagues or supervisors become aware of the PhD students' difficulties. Every year we have 10 colleagues in this training. 10 per year. I want to give you some figures. In the University of Reims Champagne-Ardenne, the researcher and teacher researcher are 1,396. So
10 a year.
More.
Okay.
After we can also
Meaning?
No. On the transversal doctoral training for PhD students. You know that PhD students realize research work in the research unit, but they have to follow transversal and specific training to be able to defend their thesis at the end. During this training, varies the training to the fight against violence and all forms of conflict. And besides this part is and will be mandatory for all PhD students to make them aware of the difficulties for them and for the others. Okay.
Sure.
Maybe I can speak about another thing after speakers.
Sure. Thank you, Beatrice. Anyone online from the panel want to add something?
Safian, I wrote a message, a chat on the chat if you wanted to have my contribution on this aspect.
Oh, okay. Thank you. C'est la référence dans le chat. I don't have access to the chat, Angela. That's why I'm on not on.
Do you want that I say?
Yes, please.
Okay. Usually the guidelines that contrast discrimination and also in general are available in each university, and frequently are also some indication from the different government. Then, in my opinion, the problem is to increase the activity of training, not only from students and the professor and advisor, but really to improve a training from bottom up and bottom down, top, bottom, and bottom up to evaluate the different aspects. The other condition is that it is necessary that the student and also the professor knows that exists a clear procedure that punish this type of acts. And the other aspect that I didn't listen, but probably I was not always concentrate on this meeting, unfortunately, the problem of the unconscious bias. That is another aspect of, in my opinion, of harassment that sometimes some people doesn't know that is a violence, physical, psychological violence. Thanks.
Thank you, Angela, for your question. That's a huge problem, Angela, you're bringing on the discussion, because that means evaluation of academic personals, workers, teachers, and that's something quite complicated. In any country, I guess, but it is complicated. As Beatrice was saying, in France, most of the teachers, if I get it right, they don't want to do the training, right? So it is complicated because they might see the training as an evaluation, as something they don't feel responsible. They feel they already know it, and it's not something on them. So they don't see why they should do any training about EDI, about harassment. They are not concerned. It's not their problem. And that's typical. If we go to the literature, we're going to find exactly the same thing. And something important, this is what Beatrice was saying about the teacher that don't want to do the training. If we look at another number, we're going to understand how it works. If we look at all responsible in France, I'm talking about all universities in France, about the vice president or director, it doesn't matter the name, but the ones who are responsible about EDI, inclusion, diversity, and equality. 89%, 85 to 89% of them are women. They are not men. And if we go to any meeting, we've been to many meetings, Angela, and we've done a lot of seminars, and most of the audience are women. And that's because we don't include another part of the population, which are the men and some. So basically, you get the training, and you get when you're already sensitive to the question, to the issue. Wanted to add something, Angela? I saw your.
Yes, I think that this is one of the problem. That is usually the problem is that the necessity that to spread this aspect and to involve in this activity male and female, of course, and also the other aspect, because the other violence and harassment that is frequently present is toward the people that are not gender defined in the standard American United States Trump's definition, or for the people that is the group of LGBTQ as a problem correlated to the harassment they have put attention in and in particular area of the university in Italy. Now we try to improve some area which is possible that there is the support for these people, psychological and not only, and to open to evaluate what type of discrimination they receive.
Exactly. Anyone want to add something to the talk? Otherwise, we're gonna go. Oh, okay. Sorry, Beatrice. Yes.
Can I speak about
Sure.
the actions of a government
Yes.
about disability? For example, every year, the Higher Education and Research Ministry launched a campaign for a doctorate on disability. Okay. Virginie and Vanessa this morning seem to not knowing this campaign. This campaign exists who has existed since 2011. It aims at funding 30 doctoral contracts annually over 3 years. Okay, and it aims to expand for 3 or 6, 9, 12 months after the 3 years. And the ministry encouraged the establishment, the higher education institution, to do the same thing. I mean that for one doctoral contract funded by the ministry, the institution must fund one contract. It's the principle of one-to-one. Okay, and the only criterion, yes, for eligibility, the PhD student, the future PhD student, must be beneficiary of, I don't know if the term exists really in other countries, but in France it's called Disabled Worker Status Recognition, RQTH. And the selection criteria remain the scientific quality of the subject, the scientific quality of the candidates, and the quality of the environment. And notably, is the environment favorable for completion of the doctorate? Okay, so there is measures at the scale of the government, and the government, the Ministry of Higher Education and Research, encourage this institution to do the same thing. It's not the only thing, but it's a beginning.
Okay, thank you, Beatrice. Let's go to the next question. In practice, should universities adopt a supervision model focused on women or based on care to better support female PhD students facing specific challenges, gender bias, harassment, imposter syndrome? Or could such an approach risk reinforcing stereotypes and further undermine their academic legitimacy? It's a bit controversial question, but we have to look at it. So basically, are we supposed, or should we have specific supervision for women PhDs? Or if we do so, that's going to be interpreted as an offense, as a lack of academic legitimacy, or reinforce stereotypes?
I prefer to ask a supervisor to work on their implicit cognition. I don't think if we ask them to process differently women from men, I'm not sure it. Yes, I'm not sure it will resolve the problem of stereotype, gender stereotypes. So.
I think the behavior of a supervisor must be professional, even if the PhD student is a male or female, I think.
But don't the women have specific, maybe conditions or situations that we've been talking about this morning? It's a question. I'm not giving my opinion
I
on
think
that.
we had to work about work-life balance, but we have to announce it for men and women,
Okay.
and not to discriminate because, yeah,
Okay.
I'm not convinced by promoting different monitoring of PhD.
It's like an affirmative action, positive discrimination, we might call it.
We can do positive discrimination in the recruitment, but after in monitoring PhD, I think it's quite dangerous.
Okay. Julia
It's maybe
or Marina? Any thought about that?
Yeah, I go if I can, and I want to go back just a little bit to your previous discussion about PhD students, if they are students or workers. This is actually a very hot debate in Italy because for the law, PhD students in Italy are students, but at the same time, there is a kind of a big social movement that's asking the parliament to make them worker, even legally. So this is a very hot debate right now. And I don't have a personal take on this because I really think there are pros and cons in both sides because students can be protected more efficiently, I think, in some situation, for example, in situation of discrimination or sexual harassment or violence, more than workers. And but at the same time, of course, workers are more social rights, social security rights, employment benefit, and so on. But at the same time, I think that focusing a little bit on the student part of the student side of a PhD could place some accountability and responsibility on the supervision part because a student must have some formation and some education. And I really think that there are implicit rules in academia that they not often take part in the supervision relationship because there are gender bias, but there are also very big class discrimination and class bias. So professors don't pass this kind of implicit rules about how academia works, about how research work is supposed to be, about how to behave in certain types of contexts like conference or meetings or so on. And this could be a part of the formation/education side of a PhD. But at the same time, I think we have to overcome the idea that the supervision of a PhD student has to be a two-person relationship because of course you can take all the laws and all the policy you want, but at the end of the day, it's still a human relationship between two persons, and we cannot be 100% sure that this relationship is going to work. So I think we should really overcome this idea that one PhD student, one professor that supervise him or her. But at the same time, I really think that mentorship programs are not the right answer or are not always the right answer. There is something about mentorship that deeply disturbed me because I really I appreciate positive actions in all aspects of gender equality, laws, and life. But when speaking about academia, there's something that pushes me off because they are so focused on this idea that more vulnerable social groups are supposed to be educated, are supposed to be better, to to be included in academia. So there are really programs focused on the individual, like if they are not included in academia, it's the individual's problem, and I don't think that's it. So maybe we should do them. We should add this kind of mentorship program to the supervision relationship to grow the relationship a little bit. But at the same time, I don't really think they are the answer. And of course, I don't have any more appropriate answer about that, but I would like to see what the others are thinking about this. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I come in?
Sure. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Julia inspired me to just touch base on recent Deloitte research, recently published in Bosnia, where they said that 8 out of 10 women from, let's say, leadership position pursue with additional academic, formal or non-formal education opportunity in order to protect themselves. So that means that even though from some previous discussion, I learned like I could be a privileged one, I have financial stability and all of this stuff, the trigger for PhD diploma, for example, could be some type of discrimination, harassment, or vulnerability we were exposed to our professional life. So it's very interesting also to mention work-life balance. I think some of the colleagues explain what are the potential differences, especially in traditional communities and society, when it comes to position and opportunities, and of course, on top of it, equality and equity for female versus men candidates. So again, from very personal perspective, being mom of 2, one with disability, and based on some UN reports, my unpaid work is like on average, it's 6 hours per day. But since I have a kid with disabilities, it's 3 times more. So that means 18 hours per day I'm working on some unpaid activities, such as cooking, cleaning, ironing, or picking up my kids from school to trainings, from trainings to speech therapy and what else? So that means that there is no space in my life to do anything regarding my career development, my mental health, my relaxing time on any type of hobby. And this is not the only specific case. It's actually, unfortunately, 10 to 12% of the society are facing different type of disabilities. And especially in a very traditional society such as Bosnian one, moms are handling all of these stress. And if there is no support from society, from employer, from peers, basically my entry point to academia would not be possible, even though I would have maybe the best supervisor ever. So that type of combination and like a supportive network, and this, I think Julia mentioned mentorship, is a crucial in order to even be vocal and ask for additional support and help from the government, from the when it comes to legislation, normative work, in order to provide the same space and the same entry points for everybody who wants to pursue with additional academic step forward, even though we could be privileged at some point when it comes to, let's say, financial sustainability, and unprivileged and very marginalized and vulnerable in different sense when it comes to, let's say, people with disability or different sexual orientation or any type of minority is post-conflict society, such as Bosnia. And what I want to also add that based on latest report when it comes to election, even though we have majority, females are majority when it comes to like their participation at university. They are the best students across the all sectors. But when it comes to election and any type of like engagement with media, there was just a 3% of female analysts who provide their own analysis of media and political landscape in Bosnia. So that means that there is a tendency from in the public sphere that still men represent the reliable source of information, and their interpretation is the valid one, even though we have thousands of female professors who could also make their own comments and provide us with certain analysis on elections or any other topics. So there is some biases, maybe unconscious or very conscious one, that we have to fight for, starting from our own our own imposter syndrome, but also empowering all of us that our vision, our statements, or our ideas are still valid enough to share with others, even in such a small online safe zone like today. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question for you. What you said is really interesting, and I want to go back to my previous question about specific way to deal with PhD female. In France, if you're working, you can get an extra year to finish your PhD because the time of working is valuable, basically. Yes, yeah, exactly. So that's important. Follow me. That's really important. That means your work, what you're doing, has a value. So we give you extra time. As a mom of two, what you're doing outside university, we won't give you any extra time, basically. So which value it has? I mean, if we take it from this point of view, that's what I was talking about specific. You had two choice. I can say, okay, you have two. One has a serious condition. We give you extra time. We give you extra funds. I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying because we value what you're doing because that work, as you said, takes 6 hours, 8 hours. They mean something, and that's important. That was my question, my previous. What do you think about that? In your specific case, and I let the others to answer.
Well, very briefly, I would love to have more time, and I would be more than happy that not just myself, but other women that I met in different medical departments or at the street are empowered enough to basically develop their own human capital or their own potential, but that will definitely pay back to society and their own family's growth. Because don't forget, there is a very famous quote I mentioned all the time, like when the kid has a disability, the entire family has the same one. And in my country, unfortunately, many women, even though they are highly educated, they have no opportunities to be fully employed due to a child condition. So that means that they have to take care of the child because there is no system of support, neither in health system or in educational system. So basically their human capital is not used properly in the country. That's the one thing. And the second one, I have to admit that based on the law, there is opportunity for two working parents that one of them take part-time while he or she will be fully paid by the employer, which is fantastic opportunity. So that means I could work 4 hours per day, but be fully paid. Unfortunately, there is a huge stigma for men to take advantage of that opportunity because it's kind of provided just for women because mothers should take care of kids. And in my case, my husband is using that benefit, let it call it, because my employer as international organization does not recognize Bosnian laws. So there is a lot of nuanced and probably different approaches that we could take and then discuss. But this one small normative definition, such as part-time work, could be such a helpful for one small family to grow together, to find their balance between child needs and parents' needs, and then to combine all of these aspirations for career advancement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry if I'm too inspired with this topic.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Can I add something too?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you so much because Marianne's speech inspired another little bit of my thing, which is I was starting to think that maybe we should try to include some terms that comes from sociology, for example, secondary victimization, which is usually related to, for example, trials in courts. But I think they could have some heuristic meaning in this kind of speech because because what we are talking about is we are asking some vulnerable identities, some vulnerable communities to take the double load of being in academia, which is hard, and at the same time being the perfect vulnerable identity, vulnerable individual to be in academia and do all the extra work to align with this kind of ideas. So I really think we should start to analyze this a little bit more, and this is one of the reasons why mentorship or other kind of you mentioned mental health, like we are asking people which are the most vulnerable to take all this work of bettering themselves, bettering their mental health, bettering their financial stability or instability, because if they can do all these things, they can stay in academia, maybe they can feel a little bit more comfortable in academia. That's not what inclusion is about. So yeah, I get passionate too about this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you. Next question. And last question. Probably. Even if I have 15 more questions, but we're going to stick to this one. Given that today's PhD candidates are tomorrow's faculty and decision makers, how can we ensure they do not replicate current flawed mechanisms such as harassment and discrimination, and instead drive lasting institutional change? Because as I see it, we are generally, most of the countries, with the EDI politics, we are supposed to look at the causes, and we are more looking at the consequences. We look at students, we give trainings, and that's, of course, that's good, because they need to understand the mechanism, especially the invisible mechanism. But we don't address the causes. And even if we give training to students in university, if we don't change structural institutions, basically the institutions have a certain power on people, of course. So even if we train them, they're going to keep doing what they saw and what they experienced with their supervisors or the institution. And that's why, if you look at the numbers, and if you look at the backlash with EDI in the United States, even in Europe, in some countries, the programs EDIs are not well implemented in general in all the universities. Each university has EDI in general in France, but that's different. I'm not saying about the institution, about EDI in the institution. I'm talking about, does people, are people aware about EDI? They practice EDI, which is totally different. So that goes to my question. Given that today, how can we ensure they do not replicate what they are experiencing? Because theory is one thing, experience is different thing. If I'm being harassed, probably I'm going to do the same when I be in position. I might do it anyway. What do you think? What can we do?
Only one thing, we have to change mental representations. I don't know how exactly. We can do training, we can make people more aware, but
to nourish the talk, I want to add something. The way EDI is done and all the politics are done, we don't see it, but in general, the responsibility. And that's why there is a backlash on EDI in the United States. And that's why people who are not connected to EDI, they don't see it the same way, because they are like, I mean, we are giving them privileges. Like if someone is discriminated, a woman or different person, people generally think if we let them do something or we give them some privileges, that's a privilege. And I'm always saying, EDI is not about privilege. We are fighting, but we choose EDI, equality, diversity. So the idea of everyone in general is all these programs is just helping people who are responsible about their situation, which is not true. If I'm being discriminated, if I'm a woman, a female, doing a PhD, that's not my fault. That's the society. That's a different thing. So we need to change the paradigm. And that's totally different way to see things. That's why I asked this question. Yes, Beatrice.
It's a complex question, but I think the context is actually completely different than the last 10 or 20 years. Now, I think the new generation and the future generation will refuse all form of discrimination. I think we go to a good direction because several action and several training or witnesses allow to become aware of this problem. I suffered from harassment during my thesis, and it was a very, 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 very long time ago, but nobody spoke about that. Nobody. You shut your mouth and you continued to work, and it's completely different now. I think how we can say that the movement is launched. Okay, I think.
You don't think we might have a backlash? Because in the United States, most of university, they had EDI programs. They were really, really on the top of EDI programs. And now, like this year, that's why the standard for science, most of the EDI program are canceled in the United States. Because the thing is, that's what I was saying, we forget half of the population who attend to these kind of seminars. As I told you, we see all the seminars I've done, I see 95% of women. So that means half of the population is not there. So half of the population is totally not agree with us, maybe, but that might bring a backlash we don't see because we are too focused just on ourselves, on our EDI, on our activities, because at the point we become like activists and we forget the other population, and that's backlash. That's what happened in many countries. They didn't see it coming. They didn't see it coming.
Yes, of course. I talked about France, but
Yeah, sure.
in several countries there are a lot of things to do.
Anyone online? If there is no question, I'm going to keep my 15 questions for me. That's enough. We had a good time. The thing is just to finish our day. The first thing, and that's what we've been doing. or this morning is acknowledge the crisis. That's important. Be aware about what's going on. Accept to look at it, to talk about it, create spaces for that. That's really important. And try to bring more people from different disciplines. Implement structural change. If we don't change the structure or the institution, nothing is going to change, basically. We're going to just reproduce exactly the same mistakes and the same things. Center EDI, not as EDI. EDI, again, are not privileges. When someone is discriminated, it's not a privilege. He's not asking for something. He's just asking for basic protection or respect. That's just basic rights, human rights. Build support network. If you go to the literature, it was really important to a lot of PhD female or PhD student who has been discriminated to have spaces. Ludovic was talking about the care substitution. I think it's important. Someone to talk. I don't have the care I deserve from my supervisor, from the institution. I might get it from a friend, from a colleague, from a teacher, another supervisor. So each time you can help in academia, you should do it. Of course, report, but try to create spaces and support networks, official, formal, or informal. It doesn't matter, as long as they bring support. And again, we need, because in universities, it's really complicated. We need to put the institution and the teachers in front of the consequences. Beatrice said only 10 teachers were doing the training, and that's probably the same in most of the countries in general. I know what she was saying, so that the numbers, but it's complicated. It is really hard for anyone, and maybe especially for the academia, to look at her actions and her possible discrimination. That's important. Thank you very much. Thank you to Julia. Sorry, you want to add something? Go on.
No, I was applauding.
Okay. Oh, okay. For me, it's the same,
A
Julia.
complete different gesture.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the panel. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the audience. Thank you for joining us in online. We had up to 31%. Glad about that. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you on the next seminar.
And thank you, Sophia.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. See you. Hi, Katrina.
Bye.
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 Hi, Angela. See you. Bye.
Bye.
Lisa.
See you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye, Katrina. Well.
Bravo, Sophia.
C'est
Bravo.
fait. C'est
Bravo.
bon. Merci. C'est fait vite.
Alors, Sophia,
Ouais,
ce
oui.
que je n'ai pas dit,
Oui.
j'aurais pu dire,
Oui, j'imagine.
c'est que dans les 10 par an, il n'y a jamais de gens de SHS.
Il faudrait quand même pas les remettre en...
Moi, les gens de SHS m'ont dit, qu'est-ce que vous croyez?
On
ne sait pas encadrer des doctorants. Je fais ça depuis 20 ans. C'est pas vous qui allez m'apprendre.
Je sais exactement ce qu'il
C'est
a.
terrible.
Et...
Terrible.
Tu parles de la formation qui avait eu lieu un mercredi après-midi à
Ah oui,
Non, là, c'est une formation de 2 jours pour les directeurs de thèse et les encadrants de thèse.
Eh bien, dans ce cas-là, je suis encadrante de thèse et j'ai jamais reçu de mail ni d'informations sur ce point.
Ça passe par les